wrong in their judgments, but that's neither here nor there. The general academia accepts it as being quantifiable, that they can produce some form of dark matter assessment. But the issue may really be that the unknown energies from space are going to be much more changing in the whole of our infrastructure as well as humans, and that may be what's driving the powers that be at the moment in terms of their fear quotients.
Right, because it's something beyond their control, which has to kind of make them crazy, I would think.
I would believe that's the case as well.
Like, let's say it's the huge solar flare that knocks out all the electronics. That can't be good for them either.
I don't know about that, because presumably the underground installations, anything with appropriate shielding, would be effectively okay and be able to run. However, their control mechanisms break down, so I grant you that's the case. But I'm thinking about those types of energies that perhaps go to a deeper level of things. There's this philosopher Gurdjieff. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, sure. He has this concept of the solilunius, which is that the periodicity of sun activity can be correlated to basically mass outbreaks of hysteria, war, and other troubles here on the planet. And he may have something. There may be something in his thinking there at a scientific level. There may actually be energies that come on down, for instance, and zap all of our pineal glands, and we all get really, really angry and start things like, the invading hordes that take down the Roman Empire or the Mongolian migration. I understand that there's actually other causes for those, but I'm saying that those are coincident with certain solar activities as well.
Well, everything is thought and energy. And, of course, it's going to affect us. But here again, it's how we receive it and interpret that predicts how it will affect.
I would agree with you there, yes. Mm. And so in that sense, that gets back to the point of the universe may have actually had intention in the unfolding of time such that just at this point where we're en masse being hit as humans, as omni-humanity on this planet, with this strange new energy from space, that we also have in the background the explosive growth of the internet and the sharing of knowledge such that perhaps a lot more people will be aware that this is the potential of what's going on and won't react to it the way that we might have without that information.
Yes. And just in case any new listeners have never heard of Clif and the WebBot Future Viewing Project, you can go to the archives with them and then just, go to halfpasthuman.com. You find out more about it. And some of the things you've heard are the very colorful names that the WebBot project has for groups of what you call entities, but you have amazingly delineated them so brilliantly.
Well, I don't know about that, and I'm always opposed to reductionism as an approach to dealing with the universe, but we had to have some method of corralling all of these little critters in our visual model space, and of course, being humans, we labeled them. So, off we go.
Well, they're fun.
Yeah, that's true. Like I say, you got to have a sense of humor about all of this, yeah.
What?
Otherwise, there's that stampede,
Right. Oh, we're at a break already. Whoa. All right, let's take a break. This is Beyond the Ordinary with Clif at halfpasthuman.com, Adventures in Future Viewing.
We are Beyond the Ordinary with Beyond the Ordinary Clif at halfpasthuman.com. And let's get an update on the twin earthquake
non-event.
Non-event that...
it actually was an event. And it was there.
The issue for us is the following, that we had a situation where we had language building around twin earthquakes repeatedly, and that did manifest pretty much globally, almost within, I think we're about 15 days off, really, in terms of time, and I understand why now. I can get into that in a second, but around the twin earthquakes, we had language that indicated isolation and tough times up here in the Pacific Northwest. And so it was our monkey minds that said, earthquakes and isolation in the Pacific Northwest, a known geoactive region. Aha, let's put the two together, and what do we get? Well, we get an earthquake that causes isolation up here. Now, curiously, And coincidentally, we had one of the roughest winter storms in, I don't know, maybe several hundred years up here. It got dumped on with the snow. The Pacific Northwest was isolated. We had all kinds of people without power and all the usual results, none of which was due to an earthquake. But simultaneous to that, we had twin earthquakes in San Diego. We had twin earthquakes in Papua New Guinea. We had twin earthquakes referenced in China. And we had twin earthquakes referenced in the local papers in Latin America. So at that point, we were actually seeing some of the language fulfilled, not the damage levels. Those are still pending, although I think they're probably just a misreading on our part. But nonetheless, there's some of the earthquake fellows that are saying this was one of the most curious patterns they'd ever seen. Not just merely the association of all these twin quakes, but also in the overall pattern of how we had a period of quiescence, then this little rush of all these earthquakes, which even continues to this point. And at the same time that all of this was going on, we had the dancing mountain, although it's the reverse, it was the quivering at Yellowstone. And so we've got, also at Mammoth, we've gotten a very strange pattern of earthquake swarms there that are very definitely odd. So a lot of the linguistics have played out, just not the way that we anticipated. Now, as to the timing on it, the 10th, 11th, and 12th, which is when we thought the earthquakes were going to happen, curiously turned out to be the point at which we had a peak of incoming gamma ray bursts. Gamma ray bursts have been repeatedly in the popular press, if not the academic, hidebound, peer-reviewed, group-constrained think, have been associated with earthquakes. And usually there's about a 14-day period from the onset of the GRBs to the actual quakes. That held true at this point, and the GRBs came in on the 10th, 11th, and 12th. So we were actually off by about 15 days from the geoactive period peak, but nonetheless, within, I would say probably 30% of the linguistics being satisfied within those first few days. Now, this gets back to also to George Ure's interpretation, where he said, well, we had all this earthquake language that showed up in the popular press, but it was around Madoff's scandal. And he's quite correct. We did see all of that kind of language show up after shocks, and they kept repeatedly using terms, sending shock waves, temblors through the financial markets and through the charity markets and so on. So we got a lot of that linguistics there. In that sense, then, the interpretation was just way off. The linguistics happily obliged and showed up as forecast. We just didn't have a clue ahead of time how they would all be related. And thus comes to the real nexus of our work, which is to always try and fine-tune, such that we get feedback like this, oh, okay, this was basically a failure, but at the same time we succeeded within these small parts of predicting some of the language that showed up. Again, though, we misinterpreted it. So next time, we're going to see if we can't have these relationships a little bit better defined. Sort of makes sense?
Oh, very much.
Totally. And isn't it really gives a beautiful picture, because you are actually basing the information coming in for these predictions on what we are, every single human, extremely psychic, just really covered up. But that to me is not only proof of what your web project does, but it should really go to convince everyone that we have tremendous abilities that many people, most people, are unaware of, blind to, even though it happens daily.
Yeah, that actually brings up an interesting thing that we're trying here. The guy who works with me and does server kind of stuff is not metaphysically bent the way that I am. And so he wanted to know, well, when you say universe speaks to you and this kind of stuff, what do you mean? And so I had to give him some examples, and I've devised a little experiment for him. It turns out that this year, 2009, our data for a number of years now had been saying was going to be a point of transformation. That is to say, we're all jumping off into the pool, both feet, no hesitation, no dipping of the toe. We're in it now. And in regards to that, there's this notion out and about called a sync wink, a synchronistic wink from universe. And kind of is a situation of where if you're paying attention, universe will come along and talk to you. And you can actually determine that universe is talking to you within the time, within the moment of it speaking, if you sort of pay attention. And I'll give you a couple of examples here in a second. But what I've done for Igor is to give him a little logbook, and he's going to maintain a logbook of sync winks this year. And I thought, I should do that too. I'm aware of universe talking to me, but this will heighten it within my awareness and raise it up in my consciousness, and maybe I'll be able to discern more. And as soon as I thought about that, okay, I'm going to do this, I went on down to do some dishes and make some coffee in preparation to coming up here and getting all caffeinated and spilling the beans about stuff. And lo and behold, there is a bit of spaghetti that's all curled up in a particular way that reminds me very much of the Om symbol in yoga, which of course is union, with universe. And it's like, aha, here I think about having a sync wink, and there's one right there. Now that's a little tiny one. That's just a bit of dried up spaghetti when you're doing dishes, right? It was in the bottom of the colander. Let me tell you about a really good one here. George Ure, who's a really cool guy, and he's a reformed economist, or reforming economist. He's an academically trained economist with some real knowledge, and monkey mind just chock full of numbers and stuff. So
let's tell people now, you can go to urbansurvival.com.
Yes, that's George Ure's site.
Yes.
And he talks about basically how to keep your head in times of terrible troubles and how to live better with less, and he's very good at it.
He's wonderful, yeah.
You know, just a marvelous writer. If he gets himself out of the way, the stuff just spills out, and it's like reading the best of Twain or someone of his ilk.
Yes.
In any event, George, a few years ago, had moved off of his boat. He had been living up here in the Northwest on a boat. He and his wife sailed down to California. He gets a position in Florida. They relocate to Florida. He sells the boat. They're living in a condo there. Time passes. For whatever reason, he's motivated by universe to move. Around that period of time, a couple of things really coincidentally happened to him. One of them is a really hard-to-deny sync wink, because he comes home one day from work and his wife's saying, look out the back door here. And he looks out the back door, and there's this 30-foot-high geyser of flame in his backyard. And it turns out that there had been a gas main that ruptured and somehow ignited, and it's right in George's backyard. I don't know how many feet away, you'll have to ask him, but there's 30-foot-high geyser of flame. Coincidentally to that period of time, he also acquired some property sight unseen in Texas. And just as he's leaving Florida and relocating to Texas, in fact, the day he arrives at this property in Texas, which is being babysat by his brother-in-law, he gets a call on his cell phone from his brother-in-law saying, hey, bro, guess what? House just burned down. And so here's this thing about fire. Now, again, the sync wink might have been misconstrued. You know, George could have said, oh, geez, we're going to get terribly burned, or, he might have been afraid of the fire or something like that. But he was rather calm about it all in Florida, and they came and they fixed it, and there was no real